That was well done, orchestrated, crisp, everything. The time for convening has arrived, and the Senate will now come to order. This time, I'd like to ask that all unauthorized persons exit the chamber. I'd like to recognize the well-dressed senator from the 53rd today.
Mr. President, thank you so much, and it's only by the example I get from seeing you every day lead this great Senate. A long time ago, under a cabbage patch leaf, the senator from the 51st District was born on this very date, and we've been questionable ever since that moment in time. Today is National Chili Day. The member from the senator from the 8th is his favorite day. And the journal's been read and found to be correct, Mr. President.
You spoiled my, or you stole my thunder. I was going to wish him happy birthday when he was actually in the chamber. Is there objection to dispensing with the reading of the journal? The chair hears none, and the reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection to the confirmation of the journal? The chair hears none, and the journal is confirmed. All senators who have bills and resolutions, please bring them forward to the Secretary's desk at this time. Mr. Secretary, first reading of Senate bills and resolutions, please.
Senate Bill 427 by Senator Mullis of the 53rd. A bill to be titled an act to amend Article 7 of Chapter 4 of Title 49 of Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to Medicaid generally so as to require the Department of
Health and Human Services.
Senate Bill 428 by Senator Cowser of the 46th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Part 2 of Article 15 of Chapter 1 of Title 10 of Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to the Fair Business Practices Act of 1975.
Regulated Industries.
Senate Bill 429 by Senator Ligon of the 3rd and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend the Official Code of Georgia Annotated so as to revise, modernize, correct errors or omissions in, and reenact
Judiciary.
Senate Bill 430 by Senator Ligon of the 3rd and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Part 14 of Article 6 of Chapter 2 of Title 20 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to other educational programs under the Quality Basic Education Act.
Education and Youth.
Senate Bill 431 by Senator Wilkinson of the 50th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Code Section 22210 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to an annual performance evaluation so as to provide for a definition of on-time.
Education and Youth.
Senate Bill 432 by Senator Harbin of the 16th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Chapter 25 of Title 33 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to life insurance so as to require annual notification to policy owners and
Insurance and Labor.
Senate Bill 433 by Senator Jones of the 25th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Title 33 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to insurance so as to require disclosure of diabetes prescription drug pricing.
Insurance and Labor.
Senate Bill 434 by Senator Harrell of the 40th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Chapter 8 of Title 12 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to waste management so as to prohibit plastic bags and food service disposable
Agriculture
containers.
and Consumer Affairs.
Senate Bill 435 by Senator Strickland of the 17th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 10 of Title 17 and Article 2 of Chapter 3 of Title 35 of the OCGA relating to procedure for sentencing and imposition of punishment and the Georgia Crime
Judiciary.
Senate Bill 436 by Senator Mullis of the 53rd and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Chapter 2 of Title 21 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to primaries and elections generally so as to revise the law regarding
Ethics.
Senate Bill 437 by Senator Beach of the 21st and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Title 14 of the OCGA relating to corporations, partnerships, and associations so as to provide for the
Judiciary.
formation. Senate Resolution 810 by Senator Mullis of the 53rd, a resolution urging school districts to establish and maintain recycling programs and for other purposes.
Education and Youth.
That completes the order, Mr. President.
First reading of House bills and resolutions, please.
House Bill 417 by Representative Powell of the 32nd and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Title 35 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to law enforcement officers and agencies so as to provide for the comprehensive regulation of trauma scene cleanup.
Regulated Industries.
House Bill 583 by Representative Williams of the 148th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Title 33 of the OCGA relating to insurance so as to provide a framework for regulating the offering or issuance of travel.
Insurance and Labor.
House Bill 820 by Representative Tanner of the 9th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Article 3 of Chapter 2 of Title 32 of the OCGA relating to officers in the Department of Transportation so as to provide for the state investment in railways.
Transportation.
That completes order, Mr. President.
Secretary will now read reports of standing committees.
Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Education and Youth has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 367 do pass, respectively submitted by Senator Martin of the 9th District Chair. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Health and Human Services has had under consideration the following legislation and instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 307 do pass, respectively submitted by Senator Watson of the 1st Chair. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Insurance and Labor has had under consideration the following legislation, has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 374 do pass. Respectfully submitted by Senator Jones, the 25th Chair. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Judiciary has had under consideration the following legislation, has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 405 do pass. Senate Bill 388 do pass. Respectfully submitted by Senator Stone of the 23rd Chair. That completes order, Mr. President.
Secretary will now read bills and resolutions for the second time.
Senate Bill 316 by Senator Thompson of the 14th and others. Military spouses licensed in other states to practice certain professions obtain a license by endorsement to practice in the state provide. That completes the order, Mr. President.
All right, it's now time for our morning roll call. Are there any motions to excuse? Chair recognizes the senator from the 48th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for unanimous consent to excuse the senators from the 5th and 6th districts for business outside the Capitol and inside the Capitol.
Without objection, the senators from the 5th and the 6th are excused. Chair recognizes the senator from the 40th.
Good morning, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 37th.
Without objection, the senator from the 37th is excused. Chair recognizes the senator from the 34th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 12th business inside the Capitol.
Without objection, the senator from the 12th is excused. Chair recognizes the senator from the 33rd.
Good morning, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse, I believe, the senator from the 46th.
Without objection, the senator from the 46th is excused. Are there any additional motions to excuse? The chair sees none. The secretary will call the roll of senators. Signify your presence by voting the yea switch. The secretary will unlock the machine. All right, it is time for our morning devotional. It is time for our morning devotional. I'd like to ask that all senators please take your seats and cease all audible conversations. Ask that the doorkeepers secure the chamber at this time. It's my honor to recognize the senator from the 15th to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance today and to introduce our chaplain of the day.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let's place the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The Georgia flag. Pledge allegiance to the Georgia flag, the principles for which it stands, wisdom, justice, and moderation. Good morning, Senate. I'm honored to be here this morning to introduce a very good friend of mine, a warrior for God, and who is keeping up the legacy of his father. This is Reverend Dr. J.H. Flakes III. He is the second child of 3 siblings born to the late Dr. J.H. Flakes Jr. He is married to the lovely Jacqueline Denise Flakes. They are the parents of 2 children, a daughter, Brea, and son, Kevin. Reverend Flakes received his Doctor of Ministry degree from Mercer University, McAfee School of Theology, master degree from the University of Iowa, Iowa City, his Master of Divinity degree from the International Theological Center, Morehouse School of Religion. He earned his bachelor's degree from Tuskegee University and elementary and high school education from Muskogee County in our school system there. Reverend Flakes earned distinction of being one of 21 students chosen by the Interdenominational Theological Center, Morehouse School of Religion, for inclusion into who's who among students in American universities across our country. In 2011, Reverend Flakes was inducted into the Tuskegee University Athletic Hall of Fame. And one of the thrilling things that he enjoyed was during the Tuskegee Morehouse Football Classic there, he holds the record of returning the longest kickoff return in that school history before its hometown crowd of 100 yards. Prior to becoming senior pastor of 4th Street Missionary Baptist Church, Reverend Flake served as pastor of the Mount Gilead Missionary Baptist Church in Atlanta. Additionally, he served as co-pastor of both 4th Street Missionary Baptist Church in Columbus and Good Hope Missionary Baptist Church in Phoenix City, Alabama. Reverend Flake's ministerial and civilian affiliations include served as executive board member of the Metro Atlanta Baptist Ministers Union, served as first vice president of the 5th District of the Congress of Christian Education, served as executive board member of the Atlanta chapter of the NAACP, served as Columbus Regional Foundation Board, served as president of the Muskogee County Clergy Association, served as a member of the Concerned Black Clergy of Atlanta, Georgia, served as the chairman of the Publicity Committee for the 2005 National Baptist Convention of the United States of America, a member of the John B. Amos Cancer Center Advisory Board, and he also served as first vice president of the Congress of Christian Education for the state of Georgia. He is the moderator of the Mount Calvary Association and served as faculty member of the National Baptist Congress of Christian Education. He served as a member of the Turner Ministry Resource Center Advisory Board of the Pastoral Institute in Columbus, Georgia. Currently, he served as the senior pastor of the 4th Street Missionary Baptist Church, where his father, the late Reverend Dr. J.J. Flakes Jr., served as pastor for 50 years. Reverend Dr. Flakes III is a sound teacher and preacher of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Let's welcome this servant of God.
To Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan, to Senator Ed Harbison, and to this esteemed body of senators, thank you, Senator Harbison, for the kindness. Thank you for your public service, and thank you for the introduction. Thank you for being a friend and a beloved public servant. I want to greet all of you this morning, and I thank you for this opportunity to stand before this august body. The inspiration for today: everyone around the world knows Starbucks. It is one of the most recognizable symbols next to McDonald's and Superman. But it didn't start that easy. Without perseverance, the coffee giant would never have existed. Howard Schultz, the founder of Starbucks, went to over 200 banks to get an original loan. Approximately, really exactly, 242. Not only was he desperately trying to secure a loan, his wife was pregnant with their first child. After a year of rejections, he was able to secure the $400,000 needed from a doctor and 2 other individual investors in order to secure the loan. Today, the brand employs over 291,000 people around the world. Starbucks is present on 6 continents and in 78 countries and territories, with around 27,340 locations. Starbucks adds 2 new locations, 2 stores, on a daily basis since 1987. Howard Schultz is worth nearly $3 billion. What's the lesson can we take from this today? Never give up. No matter how hard it might seem, never give up. If Howard Schultz had not persevered, the world would not know one of the most iconic brand ever. God has given us examples in the Bible of those who never gave up. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Moses, Deborah, many, many others who demonstrate the spirit of never giving up. Paul, Peter, James, and John, others who have the spirit or had the spirit of never giving up. And so I say to you, senators, ladies and gentlemen, no matter how difficult the path, never give up. Let us pray. Eternal God, we give you thanks for giving us another day. We thank you once again that we, your children, can come before you and ask guidance for the men and the women of this Senate. We welcome your presence. We welcome your provision of peace. We welcome your protection. We welcome your spirit of honesty in this place during this session. May these public servants' ears and hearts be open to listen to the hopes and the needs of those whom they represent. Please bless and keep our governor and all who work in this Senate and Capitol in good health, that they might faithfully fulfill the great responsibility given them in their service to the work of our great state. Bless them this day and every day, and may all that is done be for your greater honor and your glory. It's in the precious and glorious name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus the Christ. Amen. Bless you.
Let's go down here and take a picture. Are there any unanimous consents? All right, we're now going to introduce our Doctor of the Day, and I'd like to call upon the Senator from the 6th to introduce our Doctor of the Day.
Good morning. I am so incredibly honored to introduce my friend, Dr. Amar Devan. Dr. Devan is the Chief of Pain Management for the Southeast Permanente Medical Group. He is board certified in anesthesiology and pain management and specializes in treating debilitating pain conditions. He has expertise in healthcare performance improvement and has been involved in efforts aimed at promoting reasonable opioid prescribing in his medical group, which is so important to all of us. He received his medical degree from Georgetown University. He completed his residency in anesthesiology at New York Medical College and his pain management fellowship at Northwestern University in Chicago. Please join me in welcoming our Doctor of the Day, Dr. Amar Devan.
Good morning. Thank you, Senator Jordan, Mr. President, senators, distinguished guests. Thanks for a very warm welcome this morning. It's an honor to be a part of the great tradition of serving as Doctor of the Day. It's also a privilege to serve the people of Georgia as a member of the Southeast Permanente Medical Group. While some of you may not know much about our practice, we are the largest physician-owned and physician-led medical group in Atlanta. We are nearly 800 healthcare providers, and we work with our patients, not an insurance company, to make their healthcare decisions. That's been our model for more than 70 years, and I'm proud to be a part of that tradition. I practice at the Kaiser Permanente Glen Lake Specialty Center in Sandy Springs, one of our 26 locations across Metro Atlanta. We represent over 40 specialties, and we work together to deliver care to over 300,000 individuals in Metro Atlanta and Athens. That number includes almost 40,000 state of Georgia employees and their dependents. And this year, we're also honored to care for almost 2,000 retired military service members and their families through our TRICARE program. I want to thank you again for welcoming me today, and thank you for prioritizing the health care of all Georgians.
All right, we got our first batch. Ms. Parent? We have a number of special guests with us today, and I'd like to ask the Secretary to read the resolution for our first set of very special guests today.
Senate Resolution 759 by Senator Parent of the 42nd and others. A resolution recognizing February 25th, 2020 as Girl Scout Day at the state capitol and commending Girl Scouts as a national leader in providing the best leadership development experience in the world to American girls and for other purposes. Whereas more than a century ago, Native Savannah Juliette Gordon Lowe started the movement now known as Girl Scouts. And whereas the life mission of Juliette Gordon Lowe was to build girls of courage, confidence, and character. Whereas more than 59 million American women are Girl Scout alumnae, and 2.6 million girls and adult volunteers are active members. And whereas today there are 75,000 Girl Scout members in the state of Georgia in every corner of the state. Now therefore be it resolved by the Senate that the members of this body hereby recognize February 25th, 2020 as Girl Scout Day at the state capitol and commend Girl Scouts as a national leader in developing girls of courage, confidence, and character. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. I'd like to put on display for this great group here my favorite flavor, which is Samoa. I'd like to call upon the senator from the 42nd to introduce our very, very special guest here today.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's my honor to be able to recognize today, February 25th, 2020, as Girl Scout Day at the state capitol. Not only do we have some wonderful, influential Girl Scouts up here with us, we also have others who are here in the gallery observing, and a lot up here as well. So we are so delighted to have all of you with us today. We here in Georgia are maybe even more proud of the Girl Scouts than people in other states, if that's possible, because of course we know that the Girl Scouts were founded in 1912 right here in Georgia, in Savannah, Georgia, by Juliette Gordon Low, with the purpose of building and leading girls to be women of courage, confidence, and character. Girl Scouts offers hands-on, girl-led, girl-centered learning in STEM, the outdoors, and entrepreneurship, and provides many opportunities to help girls develop invaluable life skills. We see many examples of former Girl Scouts, myself included, among the ranks of our female legislators here at the state capitol. 59 million American women are Girl Scout alumni, and right now we've got 75,000 Girl Scout members here in the state of Georgia. Girl Scouts is a lot of fun and about comradeship, but also we know that more than anything else, that Girl Scouts is a leadership program and an extremely successful one at that. So not only do we have some delicious cookies on our desks, and we want to all say thank you to all of you Girl Scouts for the delicious gift, but thank you for being a part of this tremendous program. And thank you to your parents for helping you participate in this program. We look forward to seeing the types of leaders that all of you young women are going to be when you grow up. And we look forward to a Georgia that is brighter because of all of the work that you are doing. With us on the, at the podium, we have Program Manager Vina Namukasa. We have Aaron Stansel from Auburn, Georgia. We have Ariella INS Sazin from Sewanee, and Amira Davis, also from Sewanee. So please join me in welcoming our Girl Scouts and marking today as Girl Scout Day at the state capitol.
Thank you so much, Senator Parent, for helping us to get this resolution and supporting us at our Day at the Capitol program that we host each year. And thank you all, senators, for supporting Girl Scouts in many different ways, including eating our delicious cookies. You'll enjoy the cookies here today, but I hope that you remember that our program is about much more than cookies. Girl Scouts is truly a leadership program, and we have evidence in that with our 117 Gold Award Girl Scouts who will be recognized on March 8th this year. Those girls completed over 80 hours of service in our communities and are likely to be part of that 69% of senators nationwide who were started as Girl Scouts. So thank you all so much for your support. Our Day at the Capitol is truly an impactful event for girls to learn about advocacy and talking back for themselves in their community. And as evidence of that, we have Ariella to share a few words about her experience coming to Day at the Capitol.
Hello, my name is Ariella Ionesazan, and Girl Scouts has impacted me greatly. I first came here 3 years ago, and I've came back every single year for Girl Scouts Day at the Capitol. All of you legislators have greatly inspired me to pursue a career in the law field. I'm hoping I can hold office one day just like you. Thank you.
Mr. Secretary, can you please read the resolution for our next special guests?
Senate Resolution 544 by Senator Rhett of the 33rd and others. A resolution recognizing and commending Max Bacon on his outstanding public service and for other purposes. Whereas Max Bacon has long been recognized by the citizens of this state for the vital role that he has played in leadership and his deep personal commitment to the city of Smyrna. And whereas he has diligently and conscientiously devoted innumerable hours of his time, talents, and energy towards the betterment of his community and state as evidenced dramatically by his superlative service as the mayor of Smyrna since 1985. And whereas Max Bacon has served with honor and distinction, and his vision and unyielding commitment to the city of Smyrna will be sorely missed upon the occasion of his retirement, and have set the standard for public service. And whereas it is abundantly fitting and proper that the outstanding accomplishments of this remarkable and distinguished Georgian be appropriately recognized. Now therefore be it resolved by the Senate that the members of this body recognize and commend Max Bacon for his effective, efficient, unselfish, and dedicated public service to the state of Georgia. Congratulate him upon the grand occasions of his retirement and extend the most sincere best wishes for continued health and happiness. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. Couldn't find the handle over there. Chair recognizes the senator from the 33rd to introduce our special guest today.
Thank you, Mr. President, my fellow senators, colleagues, friends, and y'all. Today, we are here to recognize Mayor Max Bacon on his outstanding public service and for other purposes. You know, we all have visions, but very few people have a vision and can become a transformative person such as Mayor Max Bacon. I remember when I first came here with the Air Force and I moved to the Marietta Smyrna area, and I used to go shopping at the Belmont Shopping Center. I went and bought me a washer and dryer, and bought me a fish tank and a couple of goldfish. But you know what's the interesting part? When you go around there now, that area, the Smyrna Vining area, is a testimony to him and his father's lineage in terms of having a vision and working together to make that the destination place to go. It has also become the crown jewel of Cobb County. But I'm not going to belabor his accolades because we've read them, but I want to present to you the mayor himself, Max Bacon.
What a great day it is to follow the Girl Scouts. I have a hat at home that says man enough to be a Girl Scout. I do want to recognize my family that's here. I have two sisters, Jenny, Ruth, I know Howard, and her husband Dale. My older sister Linda Keeney, and her boyfriend, I hope he's going to be my brother-in-law soon, Mike Satterfield. It's been a great ride of 40 years, not only with the city, but with the Postal Service. And I would just say this, don't blink, because it'll be 40 years and you'll not know what happened. But thank you very much for this proclamation. Thank you.
Over here and take some pictures. Down here? Yes, ma'am. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the resolution for our next special guests?
Senate Resolution 590 by Senator Martin of the 9th and others. A resolution recognizing February 11th, 2020 as Dyslexia Day at the state capitol and urging... Senate Resolution 590 by Senator Martin of the 9th and others. A resolution recognizing February 11th, 2020 as Dyslexia Day at the state capitol and urging schools, local educational agencies, and the state educational agency to address the profound educational impact of dyslexia and for other purposes. Whereas dyslexia is a specific learning disability that is neurological in origin, and whereas dyslexia is the most common learning disability, affecting approximately 1 in 5 individuals and approximately 80% of all individuals with a learning disability. And whereas early diagnosis is critical for early remediation and evidence-based intervention that leads to self-awareness, self-empowerment, self-esteem, and necessary accommodations to ensure student, school, and life success. And whereas it is abundantly fitting and proper to draw attention to the profound educational impact of dyslexia on the education and lives of countless children, adults, and students in the state of Georgia. Now therefore be it resolved by the Senate that the members of this body recognize February 11th, 2020 as Dyslexia Day at the state capitol and urge all schools, local and state educational agencies, and educators to recognize the profound educational impact of dyslexia. That completes order, Mr. President.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. Chair would like to recognize the senator from the 9th to introduce our very special guest today.
Thank you, Mr. President. You get me every single time when you wield the gavel. Colleagues, I'm excited today that today is Dyslexia Day observed. Dyslexia Day actually happened while we were on our little unplanned recess, and so today we are observing Dyslexia Day, because I know you guys all looked at your resolutions, you remember when it came across, and you were thinking, today's not the day, but it is. It's a good day because last year we took a stand for students with dyslexia, and we said that they deserve to receive the support that they need to unlock their future in education. So I want to thank you all for your help passing the dyslexia bill. So today we stand here working hard to make sure that we are working with the Department of Education on the dyslexia pilot, which is moving forward. Next year that will run, and we're going to have that in schools big and small, in rural, in suburban and urban districts all around the state. So I'm very, very excited. I want to let you know who's up here on the rostrum with me. Today we have Tina Ingberg, we have Jenna Benedict, Anna Cover, Kyler Smith, Bryn Haynes, and Josie Haynes. And then also anybody with decoding dyslexia, I see Bryn's mom up there. If you'll just stand up and so we can acknowledge you being here. Everyone with decoding dyslexia, please stand. Awesome. So now speaking to the resolution, we have Ms. Tina Ingberg.
Thank you so much, Chairman Martin, and thank you to the Senate for passing SB 48 last year unanimously. I'm here today to remind each of you that at the moment, SB 48 needs funding in order to make it work. Behind me are students from a variety of schools, some of whom did get an early diagnosis of dyslexia. One received a diagnosis in 4th grade. And part of the reason why the pilot study is so critical to SB 48 is because it is going to define the need for screening children so that they can receive early intervention and prevent reading failure. One of the children behind me has written a book. Don't know that all of us have. In fact, I know I haven't. And we have Jenna is about to graduate from high school and go on to college. And so behind me are children who have very bright futures. And it is because they received the intervention that they needed that was so critical to their success. So thank you again for your support of SB 48.
Mr. Secretary, can you please read the resolution for our next special guests?
Senate Resolution Number 817 by Senator Martin of the 9th and others. A resolution recognizing and commending Dr. Jan L. Joseph as the 3rd president of Georgia Gwinnett College and for other purposes. Whereas Dr. Jan L. Joseph became the 3rd president of Georgia Gwinnett College on July 1st, 2019. She came to GGC after serving as interim chancellor of Indiana University South Bend in South Bend, Indiana. Now therefore be it resolved by the Senate that the members of this body recognize and commend Dr. Jan L. Joseph for her many years of dedicated service to higher education, her community, her state, and this nation, congratulate upon her appointment as president of Georgia Gwinnett College, and extend their most sincere best wishes for continued success, health, and happiness. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. I'd like to call upon the senator from the 9th again to introduce our special guests.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm excited today to have Dr. Jan Joseph here today. She's the 3rd president of Georgia Gwinnett College, and she became that in the summer. She is getting going there at Georgia Gwinnett College, which is the most ethnically diverse college, Southern Regional College. Prior to being at Georgia Gwinnett College, she was the interim chancellor of Indiana University at South Bend, in South Bend, Indiana. She has a doctorate in curriculum and instruction in science from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and then she also has a master's degree in plant science and a bachelor's degree in agriculture, both from the University of the West Indies at St. Augustine in Trinidad and Tobago. She previously was also the Dean of College Education at Eastern Michigan University, and she was also Associate Dean for Professional Development and Administration at the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences at Grand Valley State University in Michigan. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you Dr. Jan Joseph, third president of Georgia Gwinnett College.
Thank you so much, and I can't tell you how much I'm honored to have a chance to stand in this distinguished house and to acknowledge this resolution, which I take humbly on behalf of not just myself, but family and friends and all of us at Georgia Gwinnett College. We are approaching 13,000 strong, and we stand on the backs and on the shoulders of so many of y'all who have done amazing work and voted and put the dollars where your mouth was to build this amazing school just north of here. We have contributed so much to the economy, already passing more than $3 billion in the economy of the greater Atlanta region. Our students primarily come from Gwinnett, but also from many of the other counties across this Peach State. So again, I just want to say thank you so much for this privilege and for this time and for this acknowledging of the work that we're doing just up the street here in Gwinnett County, serving the students of this state and, of course, of Gwinnett County. Thanks again for your time.
And Mr. President, if I may, we have some of the students who are coming into the gallery now, students of Georgia Gwinnett College. If you could please stand to be recognized. Thank you.
Mr. Secretary, can you please read the resolution for our next special guests?
Senate Resolution 814 by Senator Anderson of the 43rd. Resolution recognizing and commending Dr. Katrina McCollum Young and for other purposes. Whereas Chairwoman Dr. Katrina McCollum Young has served for more than 14 years in public service and leadership. And whereas Dr. Young has served more than 10 years on the Georgia School Boards Association, which represents the collective resolve for Georgia's 180 boards of education. She was nominated and selected as the 2018-2019 president, and most notably, Dr. Young made history as the first black woman to lead the Georgia School Boards Association. And whereas Dr. Young received 2 gubernatorial executive appointments to Governor Deal's 2015 Education Advisory Committee and to the 2017 Georgia Professional Standards Commission. And whereas Dr. Young's commitment, leadership, and dedication to public service is exemplary, and she has served faithfully and dutifully on behalf of children and public education locally, statewide, and nationwide. Now therefore be it resolved by the Senate that the members of this body recognize and commend Dr. Katrina McCollum Young for a dedication to children and public education in this state and nationwide. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. I'd like to call upon the senator from the 43rd to introduce our special guest today.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. I rise to bring recognition and honor to a very, very special guest, Dr. Katrina McCollum Young. When you hear that name, to me, she's a servant. She's a woman of God. She's a native of Rockdale County. She has served as the president, actually the first African-American president of the Rockdale, chairwoman, I should say, of the Rockdale County School Board. And as president of the Georgia State Boards Association, in addition to leading schools, she leads in her church. She leads in the community. The name McCollum is very strong in District 43. This young woman not only has served her school on a local level, but the state level, as well as the national level. Leadership, dedication, faithfulness, and a heart to serve are words that describe Katrina McCollum Young. And I welcome her to the stage to say a few words.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for this honor. I am very humbled and appreciative for this recognition here. It is such an awesome experience, and I'm grateful and thankful for the citizens, my children, my husband, and my family, and just everyone that has supported me in this journey. And in this journey, I become fabulous, fierce, and fearless as a female. And you have to, because it continues. And I just want to say I'm grateful and thankful for this honor.
And because she's retiring from the school board, I'm going to welcome the new school board superintendent, Dr. Oates.
Thank you very much, Senator Anderson, and I just want to echo the sentiments of our distinguished board chairwoman. She's been a trailblazer in many ways, and I have to say that in the nearly 2 years that I've had the privilege to serve as the superintendent for Ocala County Public Schools, her wisdom, her support has been indispensable to me. And so she does have a heart for children, but she also, more importantly, has a heart for service, public service, and we look forward to her continued success in the public arena. Thank you, Chairwoman Young.
Take some pictures. We're now going to move on to points of personal privilege, and I'd like to recognize the senator from the 55th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise this morning to offer a point of personal privilege on a Black History moment. When Katherine Johnson began working at the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics in 1953, she was classified as subprofessional, not far outranking a secretary or a janitor. Hers was a labor not of scheduling or cleaning, but rather of mathematics, using a slide rule or mechanical calculator and complex calculations to check the work of her superiors, engineers who, unlike her, were white and male. Her title, poached by the technology that would soon make the services of many of her colleagues obsolete, was computer. Mrs. Johnson died on yesterday at age 101. But she went on to develop equations that helped the NACA and its successor, NASA, send astronauts into orbit and later to the moon. In 26 signed reports for the space agency and many more papers that bore other signature on her work, she codified mathematical principles that remained at the core of man's space travel. She was not the first Black woman to work as a NASA mathematician, nor the first to write a research report for the agency. But Mrs. Johnson was eventually recognized as a pathbreaker for women and African Americans in the newly created field of spaceflight. Like most backstage members of the space program, Mrs. Johnson was overshadowed in the popular imagination by the life-risking astronauts whose flights she calculated, and to a lesser extent by the department heads under whom she served. She did not command mainstream attention until President Barack Obama awarded her the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the country's highest civilian honor, in 2015. The next year, Her research was celebrated in the best-selling book Hidden Figures by Margot Lee Shetterly, and the Oscar-nominated film adaptation starring Taraji J.P. Henson, Octavia Spencer, and Janelle Monáe. Mrs. Johnson was critical to the success of the early U.S. space programs. NASA's chief historian, Bill Barrett, said in a 2017 interview, she had a singular intellect, curiosity, and skill set in mathematics that allowed her to make many contributions, each which might be considered worthy of a single lifetime. A math prodigy from West Virginia who said she counted everything as a child: the steps to the road, the steps up to the church, the number of dishes and silverware that she washed. Mrs. Johnson worked as a school teacher before becoming a computer at the NACA's Flight Research Division, based at Langley Research Center in Hampton, Virginia. The agency was established in 1915 and began hiring white women to work as computers 20 years later. Black computers, assigned mainly to segregated facilities, were first hired during the labor shortage of World War II. Mrs. Johnson was one of about 100 computers, roughly 1/3 who were black. When she joined the NACA, Mrs. Johnson and dozens of colleagues wrote a 600-page technical report titled Notes on Space Technology. One of rocket science's most vexing challenges, they soon realized, was calculating flight trajectories to ensure that astronauts returned safely to Earth, splashing down in the ocean reasonably close to a Navy vessel, waiting to pluck them from the water. For astronauts such as Alan B. Shepard, Jr., who became the first American in space when Freedom 7 launched on May 5, 1961, the math was relatively straightforward. Calculating the trajectory for an orbital flight, such as the one to be undertaken by Marine pilot John Glenn in 1962, was orders of magnitude more complicated, said Shetterly. I said, "Let me do it," Mrs. Johnson recalled in a 2008 NASA interview. "You tell me when you want it, where you want it to land, and I'll do it backwards and tell you when to take off." Her findings, outlined in a 1960 paper she wrote with engineer Ted Skopinski, enable engineers to determine exactly when to launch a spacecraft and to begin its re-entry. I would like to continue this, but my time is up. But I'd like to leave you with Mrs. Johnson downplayed the importance of her role in the early years of the space program. There's nothing to it. I was just doing my job. They needed information, and I had it. It didn't matter that I found that she had it. At the time, it was just a question and an answer. Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate your attention to my Black History moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. The chair recognizes the senator from the 32nd for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Fellow senators, I'm wearing purple today because I'm attending a reception today honoring the 100th birthday of Joyce Carter. Joyce plays golf with me at Indian Hills Country Club, and she actually hits the ball straight, unlike me. She is also a very good bowler, and her can-do attitude is an inspiration to many, including me. Her favorite color is purple. Happy birthday, Joyce. Thank you. I yield the will.
Chair recognizes the pro tem for a point of personal privilege. Was your button pushed the whole time? Was your button pushed the whole time?
Yeah, that's all right. No big deal. No worries, no worries, no worries. Thank you, though. Mr. President, thank you very much. We've got a group of distinguished citizens here and very talented individuals. I'd like to recognize Jonte Austin for his contributions to the music industry and the economic development and prosperity. Jonte's from South Atlanta, an incredible musician, an incredible talent. His wife, Portia, and the boss, his mother, Carlotta. Raise your hands over there. Here we go. Let's hear it. Give him a round. Jonte was a preteen newscaster on TBS and CNN, and he won the Song of the Decade Award with We Belong Together by Mariah Carey. So he is a man of considerable distinction, a great Georgian, and we're proud to have him here in our presence today. On the count of three. Ready? 1, 2, 3. There you go. Y'all getting it. Y'all getting it. Thank you, Mr. President.
You are welcome, and sorry I didn't see your button push. That's my fault. Thank you. All right, I'm going to take a point of personal privilege myself to introduce a very special guest with us today. We have the congressman from the 1st Congressional District that's with us today. Buddy Carter has been a great friend of mine and many of us here. He's a former member of this august body. The common connection that we have is we both are in the process of raising 3 boys, and so every time we get a chance to, I'm still raising mine too. We have an opportunity to share stories about how to raise 3 boys, but it's my honor to welcome back into this chamber Congressman Buddy Carter.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Governor. Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. I bring good news from Washington, D.C. We actually have full funding for the Savannah Harbor Expansion Project for fiscal year 21. Yes, that is good news. $93.6 million. That is going to be the last installment on finishing the dredging project on what is arguably the most important economic development project since the interstate system. This is extremely important. On top of that, we also got more good news in that we got a $34.6 million grant to expand Berth 1, to realign it and to straighten it out and to deepen it. That's the older part of the port. The good news keeps coming. We also got United States Department of Agriculture high-speed internet grant that's going to allow us to have rural broadband in our rural areas down in South Georgia. This is extremely important. It's part of the Reconnect program of the USDA. We're very happy with that. Also, I want to let you know that we continue to work on prescription drug pricing as well as the coronavirus. That is something that the President's going to be requesting $2.5 billion in funding for that. That's going to be very important that we do what we have to do to address this situation. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. Thank you for what you do. Congratulations on passing the bill to address surprise billing. That's something we're working on in Washington as well, but it is something that's very important. We continue to work on health care. Thank you for your commitment to health care in rural Georgia. Thank you for your commitment to all Georgians. God bless you and God bless America.
Chair would like to recognize the senator from the 48th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you know, today we have with us advocates for an important cause, a cause that often changes lives in silence and without the attention it deserves. That is dyslexia. Millions of Americans have some form of dyslexia, including myself and other members of this body. Without the proper educational attention, it can prevent anyone from achieving his or her true potential. I'm proud of the work we've done on this important issue, including the bipartisan passage into law of a pilot program to help teachers identify and address dyslexic students' needs at a young age. We should all strive to create an educational system where every child has the chance to succeed and become anything they aspire to become, even a Georgia state senator. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 14th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Many times we come down and acknowledge a lot of different things, a lot of different people. Today I come down to acknowledge that today is my wife's birthday, and I appreciate the fact that she is, I'm sure the senator from Hong County, she'd be happy, from 49, she'd be happy that you're clapping. But we all of our spouses and our family sacrifice while we serve, and while we're down here, she's back home celebrating her birthday. And so to my sweet wife, happy birthday.
Thank you, Senator. So nice of you. Chair recognizes the senator from the 40th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. I ask you this morning to imagine something. I want you to imagine being pregnant. Now, I realize that for the majority of you, that's going to be a little bit difficult. So if you're one of those people, then imagine your wife being pregnant or maybe your daughter being pregnant. Let's say it's second trimester. You live in rural Georgia, and the nearest doctor is 2 hours away. You have no car. You have 3 children, and other health issues are waiting on you: diabetes and high blood pressure. You cannot afford health insurance. You know this pregnancy is risky, but going to the doctor seems like an insurmountable obstacle, just another hurdle in your already busy and complicated life. So what do? You feel helpless. You feel alone. This is the grim reality for many mothers in rural Georgia, and especially Black women, who are 3 to 4 times more likely than white women to suffer complications during childbirth. When taking care of yourself becomes just another burden, the risk of something going wrong increases, and we must do better. It's time that we act to bring about major changes to make sure no woman in her journey of bringing a new life into this world. It is time that we make sure that women receive life-saving care that they need after giving birth. It's time that we value all life equally and save the women and families of Georgia. We must do better for all of Georgia. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 56th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, today, February 25th, is the 3rd annual after-school day at the Capitol. We're going to have several groups here today and over the next several weeks, and we'll be presenting them with an official resolution. But I want to thank the Georgia Statewide After-School Network, an event that brings all these groups together that are providing these programs all over our state. In fact, 100 different providers.
Senator, please suspend. I would ask for everyone's attention as the senator's in the well. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. There's over 100 after-school providers that are partners and play a critical role in after-school programs for Georgia's youth. As you sit at your desk today, you'll notice you have a package that will outline and show some of these programs and the impact it's making on lives, healthy lifestyles, and preparing Georgia's STEM workforce moving forward. Research shows that these after-school programs are increasing school attendance, academic performance, decreasing juvenile crime, and reducing drug and alcohol dependence. After-school programs helps our working families and build stronger communities. This has strong bipartisan support. In 2017, a poll showed that over 94% of Georgians view after-school programs as extremely or very important, and we're struggling to find out what the other 6% are. For every 1 child in an after-school program, though, there are 2 that are still waiting. So today, I hope you'll take time to meet with these groups encourage more groups to form and work with your local communities to help out our youth, our future for the state of Georgia. Thank you, and I yield the will.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 43rd for a point of personal privilege. Chair recognizes the senator from the 43rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. This morning, I rise to bring recognition, to celebrate, and to congratulate the women of the National Council of Negro Women. There is a state chapter. There are multiple county chapters. The National Council of Negro Women is a coalition comprised of 200 community-based sections in 32 states and 38 national organizations. Their goal is to educate with a concentration and focus on STEAM, financial literacy, entrepreneurship, economic stability, educating women about mental and physical health, and civic engagement. These young women advocate across the state, and today is National Council of Negro Women Day at the state capitol. Please rise and welcome them. Some of them are in the gallery. Please rise and welcome them to their state capitol. Thank you, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 18th for a point of personal privilege.
Good morning, colleagues. I'm honored to be joined by the senator from the 12th as we recognize Fort Valley State University Day. I don't know if we've got any in the gallery. I know there are some around the Capitol today. If you are, please let our folks know from Fort Valley State University that you appreciate them and what they do. You've also got on your desk some goat milk soap. This is a number of years that we have brought this for you, and it's one of the things that they do at Fort Valley State University. It's one of the many great things that they do. There's a good history there that with Fort Valley State that goes back to November the 6th of 1895. An interracial group of men, at least half of whom were former slaves, petitioned the Superior Court of Houston County to legalize the creation of a school to promote the cause of mental and manual education in the state of Georgia. In 1939, the state of Georgia acquired Fort Valley Normal and Industrial School and designated it a four-year senior college named Fort Valley State College. The university ranks in the top 10 of colleges in Georgia in producing African Americans with bachelor's degrees in psychology and physical science, and 100% of educational major graduates pass the state certification exam or become gainfully employed in careers relating to education within 1 month of graduating. Under the current leadership of Dr. Paul Jones, the president of Fort Valley State University, he has empowered people to use education as a pathway to maximize their potential through invention, intellectual fulfillment, civic leadership, and meaningful careers. I am truly honored to have Fort Valley State University in Peach County, which is in my district, and I would also ask that my great friend, the senator from the 12th, to make any comments.
Thank you, and that's my Black History moment of the day. Thank you.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 34th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. You may have heard that you need to know your numbers, which refers to key markers of heart health. Yes, this month, February, is Heart Health Month. Go Red for Women, and I know y'all missed me because I missed being here during the time we were acknowledging Go Red for Women. I used to tell all the guys, wear your red tie or I'll put you in my red dress. Yeah, my chairman from Rules over there and his person are wearing their red ties today. But I wouldn't let this month go by not reminding you all how important it is to take care of yourself. Heart disease is the #1 killer of everybody. That's men and women, and more than all the cancers combined. Many of you all take it for granted, but as a heart attack survivor, I could not let this month go by since we were in recess on the actual Go Red for Women Day by reminding you all, take care of yourself. Everybody else is dependent on you. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 20th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I'm honored today to have a bright young lady from Houston County shadowing me today, Anjali Patel. She's over here to my right. She is a sophomore at the University of Georgia, majoring in political science and international affairs, and very interested in what we're doing. I'd ask you to give her a warm Senate welcome, please.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 2nd for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today is a special day. In the gallery, there are a group of young ladies from across this great state representing My Style Matters. My Style Matters is a group of cancer survivors who has dedicated themselves to help other women and men to work through the cancer situation that they're going through. My Style Matters has done wonderful work throughout this great state. It is now a national organization having their first conference in Georgia this week, starting today. My Style Matters represents cancer survivors. It represents women who are taking care of themselves, combating this disease one person at a time. My Style Matters is in the gallery today. Thank you for being here. Thank you for what you do for Georgia.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 49th, our pro tem. It's like I got a blind spot.
No worries. Thank you, Mr. President. You know, today is YMCA Day at the Capitol, and in every community across Georgia, YMCAs are making a difference. They're improving health, mind, and spirit. Health, mind, body, and spirit. And we have a group in the gallery. Who do we have from YMCA in the gallery? Yeah, stand up. Give them a warm Senate welcome. Thank you for what you do, not only for our young people, but for our communities and our quality of life in the state of Georgia. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I yield the will.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 54th for a point of personal privilege. We're on a roll today.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, in 1986, Leadership Dalton was created to challenge the future leaders of the community of tomorrow. And today we have the honor of having our Leadership Dalton Whitfield group here with us. If y'all would please stand up and let us recognize you. Thank you for being here, and thank you for serving our community. Thank you, Mr. President. I'll yield the will.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 35th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yesterday, I came up and asked that we offer condolences to the family of Judge Elaine Carlisle, who was an Atlanta Municipal Court judge. And then I found out last night that one of my classmates from high school, in the class of 69 from Harper High School, Judge Barbara Harris, passed away on yesterday. She was a retired Atlanta Municipal Court judge, She was one of the first judges to be a founder of the Georgia Association of Black Women Attorneys in '81. And Barbara Harris was a brilliant woman who wanted to help other young attorneys all over the state of Georgia. So will you join me in offering a moment of silence for both of these young women, because they were 65 and 68, so they were too young to leave us now, and they were doing so much for us. So please join me in a moment of silence for Judge Barbara Harris.
Senators ask that we rise to our feet and offer a moment of silence.
In the name of Jesus, thank you. Amen.
You have a consent calendar of privileged resolutions before you. Does any senator wish to remove a resolution from the consent calendar? Chair sees none. Is there objection to the adoption of the resolutions on the consent calendar? The chair hears none. The resolutions on the consent calendar are adopted. Are there any motions to withdraw and commit? Chair sees none. We are now moving on to the rules calendar. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption to Senate Bill 352?
Senate Bill number 352 by Senator Burke of the 11th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Code Section 3320C2 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to online provider directories so as to provide for certain coverage requirements concerning providers that become out of network during a planned year and for other purposes. Mr. President, on February 20th, 2020, the Senate Committee on Insurance and Labor recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted by Senator Jones, Chair. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Insurance and Labor offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 352, a bill to be titled an act to amend Code Section 3320C2 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to online or provider directories so as to provide for certain coverage requirements concerning providers that become out of network during a plan year and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 11th to speak to Senate Bill 352.
Thank you, Mr. President. I offer you today Senate Bill 352, which is a fairly simple, common sense proposal that basically means that if you sign up with a physician or a provider that's in your network at the beginning of your plan year, and the payer decides that they're going to eliminate that provider from the plan, that you will be considered to be in network for the remainder of that plan year. So if you choose a provider, then you get to keep your provider. I'd be glad to answer questions. If not, I'd appreciate support for Senate Bill 352.
You have no questions. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Chair sees none. The questions on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to adoption of the committee substitute? Chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none. The main question is ordered. The questions on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 52, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Mr. Secretary, please read the caption of Senate Bill 294.
Senate Bill 294 by Senator Black of the 8th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Code Section 47-2087 of the Fiscal Code of Georgia Annotated relating to eligible large retirement systems authorized to invest in certain alternative investments so as to permit the teachers at retirement system of Georgia to invest in alternative investments and for other purposes. Mr. President, on February 19th, 2020, the Senate Committee on Retirement recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted by Senator Black. Chair. That completes order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 8th to speak to Senate Bill 294.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a very simple bill, less than 1 page. It only got a strike from the existing code whereby they are removing the exceptions of the teachers' retirement system from the provisions that allowed all of the other retirement systems in the state of Georgia to invest up to 5% of their portfolio into alternative investments. We've been investing in these alternative investments for nearly 10 years, and these other retirement systems we have earned more money, but greater return on those investments than they have in the other equities that they've been investing in, and a whole lot more than what they're earning on the stocks they're sitting on. This bill was brought to me by the board and the director of the teachers' retirement system, and it's supported by them. Historically, the teachers have been very, very conservative, and they were leery of this type of investment, but I had contact with Page and GAE, and their leadership says we personally support this. However, because of our history of opposition to it, we're going to stay neutral. The people that look at this will tell you this is good for the retirement system for the teachers. There's one other group that I heard from that they're opposed to it in principle. But the track record of this speaks for itself. I'll entertain any questions anyone might have.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 12th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the senator from the 8th yield for a couple of questions, please?
Mm-hmm.
Senator, is it not true that venture capital investments come with a substantial amount of risk?
Well, all investments that are not guaranteed by the government face risk. Some of these, yes, there is substantial risk.
Senator, is it also not true that venture capitals focus on new and expanding businesses, which may pose a substantial amount of risk?
The new investments do present greater risk. They also present much greater possible returns.
One more question, Senator, from the 8th. Is it also not true that yesterday's market, there was a 1,000+% drop in our markets due to international and global uncertainty about investments in this country and where we're headed?
I'm not updated on that, but I don't doubt you one bit. Anybody that invests in the markets have seen the fluctuations. That's
So
all
did I.
part of it. I will tell you this, that we have a group of professionals that are managing the funds that's in all of our retirement systems, and they have a very good record of picking the equities that they have chosen to invest in. The only problem I have with them is they've got way under too much money tied up in bonds that are just not yielding what we need.
One more statement. Do those bonds, or questions, a question, do those bonds tend to hold as much risk as a venture capital?
bonds don't hold much risk, but you're not going to meet these teachers' retirement obligations with bonds earning 3%.
One last question. Is it also true that we can find other alternative means of increasing the fund other than going into risky investments?
Well, let me say this: the board that we have, they have been very selective in these alternative investments that they have put money into. And first off, this is not mandatory. This is only permissive. It allows them to select some investments that are a little more aggressive, and they have had an excellent record in their stock selection. Like I said, the only problem I see with them is they have right now 31% of their money tied up in bonds is yielding unacceptable.
But brokers tend to get permissions based on the movement of the money in their investments, right?
Pardon?
I said brokers tend to get commission on the movement of the money in their investment.
The brokers
They're not gonna let it
get
just
higher
sit there.
fees on these type of investments, but here again, that's an insignificant fact, because what you really want to look at is the net. How much are you going to take home? And it takes higher fees to get these type of investments marketed. And so, in other words, the track record is what tells the story, and the track record has been very positive of what we have done in our other investments.
Of the brokers. All right. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 27th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes,
Senator
sir.
Yield.
Certainly.
I've got a couple of questions, if you don't mind indulging me. Isn't it true that probably the greatest threat to TRS is actually not the volatility of markets, but it's the possibility of inflation outpacing these low yield bonds that we're invested in?
You have hit the nail dead on the head.
Well, I tend to do that. Thank you, Senator. Do you further yield?
Certainly.
Isn't it true that there's nothing more inherently risky about a quote-unquote alternative investment, although it may sound risky, than something that may be invested in the equities market today?
Well, equities cover the whole spectrum of risk. There are some old line blue chips that are very solid. Unfortunately, they don't return real high returns. And then you've got more speculative companies that their products fluctuates greatly in demand and rises and falls with the economy. So you've got a whole spectrum of risk involved. And a wise investor is going to have a balanced portfolio.
Senator, isn't it true that for the average investor, they think about the markets as being up or down, but it's via the derivative market that you can actually capture gain and capture premium in a down market, whereas if you're simply investing in equities on the buy side without a derivative opportunity, that you can only capture money as the market goes up?
You're exactly right. In the market, when one fellow makes money, another fellow loses it, and vice versa. When one stock goes down, a value goes down, and somebody loses, somebody else is making it.
Thank you. Do you further yield?
Yes, sir.
Would you mind walking me through? I've just got a couple maybe specific questions about the bill. Who makes the decisions relative to the investment for TRS currently?
The TRS has a group of professional portfolio managers that make the decisions. We've got a board that's appointed by the governor that selects these investors, and they're the ones that make the decision.
So there's a board that appoints. Excuse me. Do you further yield?
Pardon?
Do you further yield?
Yes.
There's a board that appoints a number of fund managers.
Correct.
That we'd be investing in their platforms. I guess what I'm curious about, if the state were to have the option to review 100 different PPMs for an alternative investment, who actually would be reviewing those PPMs and making those decisions based on whether it's a Series A investment we want to do or a REIT that they may want to do, or if it's something even like purchasing a derivative like the options that we just mentioned?
The board of directors for the teachers' retirement systems are the ones that select these investment managers and their companies, and they're the ones that evaluate them. And of course, Their results is the major evaluation.
Thank you. Do you further yield?
Yes, sir.
I guess the scenario that I'm thinking of is if we're mainly dealing with large brokerage houses now, they're essentially selling us their mutual funds or selling us treasury bonds, which I think is what we're doing. And we want to be as lucky to have an opportunity to invest in a Series A fund for example, the next Starbucks that the chaplain mentioned this morning. Who are we going to rely on for the deal flow so that we can see these alternative investments?
We rely on the board of directors of the teachers' retirement system, and they're appointed by the governor. I don't know that I've ever seen an itemized list of the portfolio they're holding. I have seen a summary of their investments as far as the spectrums of the business world that they're holding equities in. And they have always had a very balanced portfolio.
Thank you. Senator, further yield?
Yes, sir.
I think that, I guess, one question or statement would be that, I'll ask in the form of a question. Isn't it true that if we were to advise most folks that were somewhere between my age and retirement, that we would actually encourage them to have alternative investments in their portfolio and not be invested in 30% guaranteed yield bonds?
A person's portfolio should be greatly influenced by their age. I mean, a young person like yourself needs to have a far more aggressive portfolio than some old coot like myself. I don't want to take as much risk now as what I took in my early years.
Thank you, Senator.
Chair recognizes the minority leader for a question.
Senator Yield.
I yield.
Senator, do you know what the funding level of the present TRS system is?
The funding level?
Yeah, the percentage or the dollar amount or both?
We've got, it's in the mid 70 billion range of funds that we have invested.
And isn't it true that we're in the 70s, maybe somewhere around 77% investment, the percentage of funding now, and it would be billions of dollars to actually be at 100% of vesting?
Right now, we have got 69% of the funds that we have in equities. We've got 31% in stock.
Do you continue to yield, Senator?
Yes.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 46th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
Yes, sir.
I don't want to be dim-witted about this, but I need a little grip on what an alternative investment is. I take it they are not stocks, they are not bonds. We've heard mentions of derivatives and venture capital funds. Can you give me a range of what these alternative investments might be?
We have in code a definition of alternative investments, and I'm caught flat-footed because no one had ever asked me that question. I hadn't thought of it. We've been dealing with this for over 8 years, but I called a while ago to the Legislative Council and tried to get them to get me a copy down here with the code that we have. I can tell you that it includes investment other than the equities, but there are certain equities that are more risky than others, and it includes those. Bonds and are rated, and just like we were very conscious of our rating of our state bonds being AAA. These investors have stocks. You got blue chips and you got varying degrees of stocks that are rated based on their past performance and projected returns, and you've got stocks that are in companies that their products fluctuate drastically with the economy, and there's equities that are classified as alternative investments that be included in that. So it's a wide spectrum, and I apologize for not having that definition. I could read it out of the code, but I just, like I said, I just had this question asked to me just a few minutes ago by one of our fellow senators, and I didn't have the answer, and Haven't had time to get it.
Will you further yield?
Yes, sir.
All right. Is it your learned opinion that by allowing the retirement systems to invest in these type of alternative investments, it would reduce the amount of money that we have been supplementing this retirement system by hundreds of millions of dollars a year from our general budget?
I certainly believe that. I think the shifts that we have already made is helped because we're down to 31% in bonds, whereas we were up nearly 40%, and in the last year or so we have moved into a direction that's a little bit more aggressive. I personally believe that we need to go even further away from bonds. And I also have great confidence in this group of investment managers that we have, because they have not gone out into some of these far out derivatives and that sort of stuff. And that's where it sure enough gets risky.
Thanks, Senator.
Do you continue to yield?
I think we have covered the biggest of the questions that I believe people should have in their mind. I'm going to ask you to think about this. This is, I put on your desk a copy of each state, and Georgia is the only state in the union that does not have a little bit, and most of them have substantially bigger percentage. But look over that list of the investments of other states that put money in these type of investments, and certainly all the other states in the nation are not wrong. Thank you. Appreciate you vote for this.
Senator has yielded the well. The chair recognizes the senator from the 52nd to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. As the Vice Chair of Retirement and former Chair, I have followed this. And first of all, I want to say that our retirement group that manages this have done a good job for us. They have done better than the national average with what they've done. They also tell us that they can do a better job with some more flexibility. So see if I can try to maybe have people think about it this way. If you're 70 years old, you're going to be doing T-bonds. You don't want that risk because you can't handle it for a year or two. If you're 20 years old, everybody's going to advise you to do this because they know over the long run you're going to make more money on these. We need to look at this fund because it's going to be around decades, and we need to say, where do we want to be 30 years from now? If we want to be somewhere 30 years from now, this definitely improves the performance. If you're looking at this year, then you're going to get very conservative and say, I can't have that day that the stock market tanks 1,000 points. I'm going to get in these 1-2% bonds, which, you know, if you're a 20-year-old, you're going to lose money to inflation over the long haul. You don't want to do these. These have been done in the ERS, as it was mentioned, for 8 years. They have performed well in the ERS, and our fund managers have done a good job of keeping us above the national average on these public pension funds. Says we'll do even better if you give us a little bit more flexibility for this 5% only of these funds. And we need to, frankly, be doing more of this and less 1-2% T-bonds if we want to improve the performance of this fund and where it's at 20 or 30 years from now. And if there's no questions, I'll yield the
You
way.
have questions. Chair recognizes the senator from the 26th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Gentleman, yield.
I yield.
Isn't it true that whatever happens, the state is responsible for the teachers' retirement system? And that means that at any one time, that if there's a downgrade in the bonds, or if there's a loss, a projected loss on the retirement system, that the state has to put up the money. And what we're trying to do, isn't it true that give an opportunity to play the market at 5% of that money rather than to be tied down to low interest bonds, which does not pick up the kind of money that you need to pick up over the years with the number of teachers coming in and their pay grade and what they put into the retirement system.
I think you're exactly correct. They have a contract, and they're going to get the money by the formula. The retirees are getting that money by the formula, but then the state as a whole is looking and saying, how much money do we have to put into this with all the other contributions to keep it to the level it needs to be? And so while they have their money, we have a responsibility as, state senators here to say, what can we do to best protect the taxpayers' money, not just this year, but over 20 or 30 years? And the answer is to let these professionals do their job and do the investments that need to be done that long-term will bring about the best rate of return. You had the parable of talents in the New Testament where the guy sits on it and hides it and doesn't do anything with it because he's scared to do anything with it. That didn't bring the return. Our managers are doing a good job. I don't want to say that we've got to do this because they're not doing a good job. They're doing a great job, but they can do an even better job for us and continue to keep us outpacing the nation.
Chair recognizes the very patient senator from the 53rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now, Senator Yield.
I'll yield to the...
Looky here. This bill is simply, isn't it true that this bill is simply an option with a low cap?
It is, and it's a very low cap at 5%. When you look in the average out there, it's 23%.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Do you continue to yield?
I'll yield for one more.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 6th for a question.
Will the senator yield?
I'll yield.
In terms of, do you know why teachers were originally accepted out of the ability to invest in alternative investments?
I think there was a conservative approach many years ago, but I can only speculate on that. Nobody was investing in these many years ago. It was stocks and bonds. These alternatives that can be metals, it can be startup companies, it can be real estate, various things have certainly grown in popularity and have shown a greater return, which is why the ERS requested some years back, 8 years ago I believe it was, to have the option to do this and have done well with it. And now the TRS performers are saying, give us the same thing the ERS has to do this. But as far as the history of it, I can't answer that.
Will the senator yield?
I'll yield.
With respect to what an alternative investment is, would the mortgage-backed securities that basically caused the financial meltdown in 2008, would that be considered an alternative investment?
That could be one of many types of alternative investments. And again, you're talking about 5%. And if you look at any of those, you look at the stock market crash of 2007, those that stayed in a long time eventually got all their money back. We're in it for the long haul. We're in it for decades. And long term, the professionals say this is the best way to improve our fund. With that, I'll yield the well.
Senator has yielded the well. Chair recognizes the minority leader to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. I kind of come down to caution you about this bill. There's a reason TRS was exempted in the past, and it's one reason we should think long and seriously about whether or not we want to do so in the future. Number one, remember, we are doing well compared to the national average in funding our system. We're about 77% funded, which is above the national average. And we can be proud of that. But it does mean that over $1 billion, I don't know the exact amount, but a great deal of money would be needed to make that fund whole. And the teachers in your district and your communities are very concerned about their pension funds, and they want to make sure that they are sure they're going to get that benefit. Number one, some pension funds, ERISA funds, are facing serious troubles. For instance, the Teamster Central State Pension Plan has sent out a notice it's going to pay its last payment in 2023 unless the federal government steps in and somehow bails them out. It's unlikely to happen. So people who are getting pension will get nothing. Now, the senator from the 26th mentioned that we'll be on the hook for this pension fund. That is an obligation of the state. And assuming we fill that obligation, it doesn't mean there won't be pain or suffering. You know, this year, for instance, we could be paying some of the backlog that's owed to the pension fund, but instead we're doing pay raises for teachers, or we're paying the operations of state. Imagine that if we had to come up with billions of dollars years in a row to try to fund the pension plan, there would be a serious, serious problem. And most likely at some time in the future, teachers are worried today that we would come and do what we did to state employees. We would cut their benefits. State employees just a few years ago got 2% of their pension for every year of service. Now they get 1%. Teachers don't want that to happen, and they want to know that each of you are protecting their pensions and acting conservatively. Number one, there is a reason why it's limited to 5%, and that is because of the increased risk factor. Do you want to tell your employees, your teachers, that you wanted to increase their risk? Some senators would say, well, I'm willing to do that because you may get more money and we want to fund your pension plan. It's worth a little bit of risk. And that is a logical step. But talking to investment brokers, which I have done over the last few days, it turns out that a lot of people have moved to venture capital and these type of investments the last few years. As one man said to me, he said, Steve, the market is stretched, and venture capital and these type of investments are coming late to the game. So I don't see why we would want to come and pass this bill now with the highest risk percentage for our teachers and make them uneasy that we are being a good steward of their pension plan. Now, some people have said other states have this as an alternative investment and we should jump on board. Well, remember, states like Illinois, whose state pension plan is woefully underfunded, has that type of investment, and we've outperformed them. Maryland has that type of investment. We've outperformed them. Oregon has it. Pennsylvania has it. Many states have alternative investments, and we've outperformed them as a state. You know, we don't need to go down this road of increasing risk late in the market with a stretched investment opportunity in venture capital if we don't think it's going to pay off and we're already achieving a better investment return than a lot of states. Number two, your teachers want the confidence to know that you are all being conservative fiduciaries of their pension. That's why we elected not to do this in the past, and I think you should consider that. I also want you to remember that publicly traded stocks are very transparent. The FEC regulates them closely, and all fees associated with those stocks are very transparent, even more so after the crash, the recession in 2008. But these venture capitalist funds, you do not have the transparency on fees or costs associated with them. There are hundreds of millions of dollars paid out each year by states for the administration of their benefit funds. And I don't think as stakeholders in this plan that we should go ahead and increase the opportunity for investments with less reporting and less disclosure, and that we know have higher fees in this investment array. So while I do understand that over the last few years there has been a good rate of return, I do understand why we would be attracted to it, and maybe a few years ago I would be different, but knowing that we're coming to it late in the market, knowing that you're increasing risk, knowing that major pension funds around this country are suffering and may fail, knowing the fear and concerns of our teachers, I would be very reluctant to increase the riskiness of our portfolio for our pensions for educators. And I know that some of them have kind of backed off their objection because of the last few years, the gains. But I remind each of you, those very gains in the last few years means the market is, as I was told, stretched, and the potential for profits not as great as they once were. So for all those reasons, and my respect for the concerns of my teachers in my district, I am going to vote no today. If there's questions, I'll be glad to respond.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 3rd for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
I yield.
For a series of questions. It seems like you're focusing on rates of return that are in the recent past, correct? Are you familiar with the average rate of return for the S&P 500 over any 20-year period?
I'm not exactly familiar with the rate
If I told you it was
the average rate of return.
if it were 7.19%, you would agree that that would be
That would sound reasonable.
sound reasonable, and it would be pretty good, right?
Yes.
Are you familiar with the rate of the return since the index started in 1926? Would you be surprised to learn that it's 10%? For the rate of return on the S&P 500. It originally started with 90 stocks.
I'm sure the senator knows what he's speaking.
And so since 1957, since they adopted the 500 stocks, would you be surprised to learn that that rate of return is 8%?
I'm sure the senator knows what he's speaking.
So then would you agree that over the long term, it's been a fairly decent rate of return investing in stocks?
The state retirement system for teachers has earned almost 10% over the last 10 years.
Okay, so thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, and I agree with that 100%. That is what I'm telling you, is these venture capitals are not part of those markets in many cases, and they are not regulated the same as the FEC. So I appreciate the senator third.
Do you
Any other
continue to
questions?
yield?
I yield.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 36th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield.
I yield.
Thank you for your comments, which I think have shed a lot of light on this debate as we consider this bill before us. I don't know if you have made yourself familiar with the Fitch ratings study that shows that if you look at the trends in the allocation to riskier assets and the returns that we see, you clearly see that you can't necessarily say you're getting the bang for the buck over the last 17 years. Now that's based on an analysis of more than 15 years of the performance of these alternative investments. And I think we need to take heed. We have to remember in this world we live in, is it not true that when money is to be made, there are a lot of messengers out there who are spinning narratives about the gold, pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Isn't that right?
Correct.
And so I think looking with caution at this narrative that there's this whole new world of alternative investments that's going to improve our pension fund is when there's studies that show that over a long time, more than a decade, those performance numbers are not what they're touted to be, and that we've pursued a very stable, conservative path, and would be well advised to stick with our current policy.
Thank you, Senator. I think that's correct. I think your teachers are, very aware of what goes on down here. They're very concerned about their pensions. They want to make sure that we're being conservative and practical. I don't think that this measure is off the wall or bizarre or just is uncredible. But I still think that the conservative path is to stay the course the way we have. We have almost 10% investment returns, which is great, better than the national average, better than many of these states that have this investment risk. And remember, people have rushed the venture capital market in these times where we're running a $1 trillion deficit and where economy's humming along. But there will be a price to pay sometime where either the deficit has to ratchet back or the natural cycles of economy where you have a recession usually every 8 years, which has been delayed, will be hitting. I don't think now is the time to jump in a riskier market that would be more, affected by recession or downturn.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
You have no more questions.
Thank you.
Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none. The main question is ordered. The questions on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 34, the nays are 19. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Ms. Secretary, can you please read the caption of Senate Bill 303? Hold for 1 minute. I want to take a point of personal privilege and recognize the fact that the sun is shining for the first time in maybe 3 weeks. Let's hope it stays. All right, sorry about that. Please read the caption of Senate Bill 303.
Senate Bill number 303 by Senator Watson of the 1st and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Chapter 24 of Title 33 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to insurance generally, so as to provide for greater transparency of prices for non-emergency health care services, to provide for a short title, to provide for definitions, to provide for the disclosure of certain pricing information through insurer websites to allow consumers to compare prices, to provide that insurers may use third parties to comply with such requirements and for other purposes. Mr. President, on February 5th, 2020, the Senate Committee on Insurance and Labor recommends that this bill do pass by substitute, respectively submitted by Senator Jones of the 25th chair. Mr. President, the Senate Insurance and Labor Committee offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 303, a bill to be titled an act to amend Chapter 24 of Title 33 of the OCGA relating to insurance generally, so as to provide for greater transparency of prices for non-emergency health care services, to provide for a short title, to provide definitions, to provide for the disclosure of certain pricing information through insured websites to allow consumers to compare prices and for other purposes. That completes order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 1st to speak to Senate Bill 303.
Thank you, Mr. President. It certainly is appropriate that the sun has come out today, and it's been several days since the sun has come out. And this goes along with transparency, or this bill is the Georgia Right to Shop Act, because that's what this does. This provides sunshine or transparency for the much-needed non-emergency health care services that provides it both with cost and quality. Transparency is accomplished by requiring that insurers provide both an interactive mechanism and a toll-free number on its publicly accessible website to permit. What this bill does not do, it does not change in any way the payment structure, does not affect HMOs, and I must say that by executive order that is also happening on the federal level also. So we're working in conjunction not only with cost but also in quality, making that transparency, because we know that if we drive quality, we drive cost. That is SB 303. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, I will yield the well, Mr. President.
Senator, you have no questions.
Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? The chair sees none. The questions on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to adoption of the committee substitute? Chair hears none, and the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Questions now on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 51, the nays are 1. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of Senate Bill 308?
Senate Bill number 308 by Senator Kirkpatrick of 32nd and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Article 3 of Chapter 7 of Title 52 of the OCGA relating to abandoned vessels so as to remove certain redundant processes regarding unattended vessels in public waters and for other purposes. Mr. President, on February 5th, 2020, the Senate Committee on Public Safety recommends that this bill do pass, respectively submitted by Senator Albers of the 56th Chair. That completes order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 32nd to speak to Senate Bill 308.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a straightforward agency bill requested by GBI that eliminates a redundancy for law enforcement regarding abandoned boats. Current law requires that both the Department of Natural Resources and the GBI are notified when an abandoned boat is discovered. This bill would remove GBI from the notification loop, streamline the reporting process, and free up GBI to spend their time on higher priorities. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
You have no questions.
Thank you. I yield the will.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? The chair sees none. Is there objection or agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none, and the report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. The questions on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 50, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Ms. Secretary, please read the caption of Senate Bill 340.
Senate Bill number 340 by Senator Beach of the 21st and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Chapter 4 of Title 1 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to holidays and observances so as to provide that September 1st of each year shall be Childhood Cancer Awareness Day in Georgia, provide for legislative findings and other purposes. Mr. President, on February 19th, 2020, the Senate Committee on Health and Human Services recommends that this bill do pass, respectfully submitted by Senator Watson of the 1st Chair. That completes order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 21st to speak to Senate Bill 340.
Thank you, Mr. President, fellow senators. I bring before you Senate Bill 340, which will create September 1st as Childhood Cancer Awareness Day. And I want to tell you, when I first took this bill on, I thought of it as somewhat symbolic. I was wrong. I got to tell you, this is more than symbolism. This is to show these vulnerable children that the state has their back. Cancer is the #1 cause of death among children. Every day, 43 kids are diagnosed with pediatric cancer, 16,000 a year. And only 4% of federal funding goes towards cancer research. That's unacceptable. And what we will do with this is bring awareness to childhood cancer. It's the worst nightmare any parent could hear is your child has cancer. And I believe that having a reoccurring Childhood Cancer Awareness Day will send a strong message that we as the state of Georgia stand with these battling this disease and that we are here to help find a cure. And I also believe that this legislation will bring awareness to federal funding, but it also helps with private funding towards cancer research and clinical trials for cancer research. So I believe Georgia is already gold strong. I wore my gold tie today for Childhood Cancer Awareness Day. But I ask you to support this legislation today to prove to our citizens and our country that we care about our children. Mr. President, if there are no questions, I yield the well.
You have no questions, Senator.
Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? The chair sees none. Is there objection or agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 53, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Ms. Secretary, please read the caption of Senate Bill 342.
Senate Bill number 342 by Senator Jones, the 25th, and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Article 2 of Chapter 3 and Article 1 of Chapter 4 of Title 25 the OCGA relating to minimum requirements for local fire departments and general provisions relative to firefighter standards and training, respectively, so as to provide for procedures for organization, issuance and revocation of certificates of compliance, requirements and training and standards of fire departments and volunteer fire departments, to establish the Georgia Volunteer Fire Service Council and for other purposes. Mr. President, on February 19th, 2020, the Senate Committee on Public Safety recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted by Senator Albers, Chair. That completes order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 25th to present Senate Bill 342.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I know this is the last bill of the day, and I will be brief. I want to thank my good leader from the 53rd and the 56th for helping me with this bill. This basically eliminates some of the stipulations we have on part-time firefighters, allowing, for years now, our volunteer service firefighters have been leaving our systems because we were putting too many regulations on them and requiring them to do too much training, putting them to the same standards as our full-time firefighters. So this will alleviate those requirements and hopefully improve our volunteer network again. I'll yield for questions.
You have a couple of questions. The chair recognizes the senator from the 23rd for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
Yes.
How, if at all, will this impact or interact with the retirement board regulation of hours required for creditable service and that type of?
I saw no fiscal impact. You know, that hadn't been anything that we've talked about as far as being a fiscal impact to the counties or cities on this. Is that what you're referring to, Senator?
Well, no, it's my understanding that a lot of the training standards are tied into the retirement benefits.
What we're trying to do is eliminate some of those standards that full-time firefighters are held to, because a lot of your volunteers are no longer participating because it's costing them money to be a volunteer.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 48th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the chairman yield?
Yes.
Isn't it true that my pawpaw, Newton E. Gray, was a volunteer fireman in Rock Spring, Georgia for a majority of his life?
Well, the senator knows what she speaks.
And I do agree that there are some difficulties. A lot of volunteer firefighters do have to pay to serve as volunteers. My grandfather certainly had to do so. But my concern is establishing the Georgia Volunteer Fire Service Council. Why is that necessary?
To have, because the standards were set in place by full-time volunteers. This is supposed to be made up of hopefully people who will be more sympathetic towards our volunteers and develop a limited amount of standards for them to go by, but not as strenuous as a full-time firefighters.
And does the chairman further yield?
Yes.
And what, if any, fiscal impact is there to establishing this new council?
Should be no fiscal impact. Those are going to be volunteers in and of themselves. They'll be appointed volunteers to serve on that committee as well.
Thank you, sir.
You have no more questions, Senator.
Thank you. I appreciate your favorable consideration.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 53rd to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank the senator from Butts County for his excellent work on this bill. And many years ago, my uncle was a chief of the Chickamauga Fire Department. And I was on a list to be a volunteer for a year or two. In that era, and that was 1981, then after I when I became on the fire department or become a firefighter, I was the rookie of the year. I was much thinner. Today I'd be a victim. But I was there. And it was a different world back then for civic groups, for volunteers, no matter where, library, hospital, fire department. We're trying to make sure that we keep our firefighters safe, but reduce all the requirements that would maybe be to advance to a higher officer or something. We're wanting to recruit volunteers again. We want to make sure they're safe, but we want to reduce the requirements and all the money they got to pay for all that stuff in order to have volunteers come and rescue you out of your burning house or come and help the ambulance guys that are gals that are at your door trying to make sure you live. So please help us restore the volunteerism of the fire service in Georgia. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Senator has yielded the well. The chair recognizes the senator from the 56th to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank again the senator from the 25th and the 53rd for the great work on this. A few weeks ago, you remember, we recognized the Georgia Association of Firefighters and Fire Chiefs, our representatives from all four corners of the state. Both of those associations are in agreement and support this very important bill, and also addressing the senator from the 23rd's concern for the firefighter pension fund. In order to meet those certain training and hourly obligations for service, this will not impact that at all. It'll just streamline what is available and what they have to do to meet minimum requirements. So thank you so much, and I hope you will vote in favor of this bill. I yield the well.
Senators yielded the well. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? The chair sees none. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair sees none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. The questions on the passage of the bill. All those in favor will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 53, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. What purpose does the senator from the 29th rise?
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the rules be suspended to allow for first reading and reference of a local bill.
Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption?
House Bill number 967 by Representative Smith of 133rd and others, a bill to be titled an act to amend an act establishing the Municipal Court of Columbus, Georgia, so as to provide that the Sheriff of Muskogee County shall be the ex officio marshal of said court. Back, please, order, Mr. President.
Senator from the 29th has asked for unanimous consent that the rules be suspended to allow for the first reading and reference of a local bill. Is there objection? The chair hears none and is assigned to state and local government. Chair recognizes the majority leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that Senate stand adjourned until 10 o'clock on Wednesday, 26 February 2020.
Thank you. The chair would like to make an announcement just to remind everybody that tomorrow is a State of the Judiciary at 11 o'clock over in the House chambers. So just want to make sure everybody is prepared for 11 o'clock tomorrow. We will go over to the House chambers. Mr. Secretary, please read us your announcements.
Rules will meet upon adjournment in 4:50 cap. Ethics is canceled. Regulated industries and utilities will meet in 4:50 cap at 2 p.m. State and local government will meet in 310 CLOB at 2 p.m. Banking and financial institutions will meet in MES 1 at 3 p.m. Natural resources and environment will meet in 310 CLOB at 3 p.m. Agriculture and consumer affairs will meet in 4:50 cap. And transportation has been canceled. Rules has also been canceled. Back, please, order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the majority whip for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, I've been working on a lot of legislation this year. One, obviously, is tort reform. But in my time off, I've been working on a little reading at home. I'm reading a book by Tom Carlyle. It's called The Sartor Resartus. Two things in that book that stand out to me. There's a sign above the Chinese shopkeeper's door that reads, "No cheating here." In another phrase in the book, Carlyle speaks of the divine commandment, which is thou shalt not steal. So whoever took my cookies off my desk, I would love to have them back. Thank you very much.
Thank you for those inspiring words, Senator. Chair recognizes the senator from the 31st for an announcement.
I'm not sure how exactly to follow that presentation, but I do want to invite you all to our Legislative Prayer Fellowship tomorrow morning, 7:15 in the Governor's Conference Room. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 40th for an announcement.
The Women's Legislative Caucus will meet for lunch now in CLB 514.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 50th for an announcement.
Mr. President, members of the Senate, what was the name of that book? Okay. We do have some guests with us here at the Capitol Day that I wanted to recognize right over here. Today is Georgia Life Science Day at the Capitol, and Georgia Bio is here. Georgia Bio is a nonprofit organization devoted to promoting and facilitating STEM education in our state, science, technology, engineering, and math. Life Sciences creates 68,000 jobs in our state, and they have a $10 billion impact on our economy. The Georgia Bio Rural Teacher Training Initiative provided 72 high school teachers in 23 rural districts with updated STEM curriculum and classroom labs in the previous year. So raise your hands over here and let's give them a welcome to the Senate. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. The majority leader has moved that the Senate stand adjourned until Wednesday, February 26, 2020 at 10 a.m. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay? No. On the motion, the ayes clearly have it. And the Senate stands adjourned.